So I think most of the businesses today cannot be very linear. Businesses will always share data amongst each other. That is how business development essentially happens. What is important is while doing that, you have kept in mind the rights of the individuals whose data is being shared. That's the reason why the law calls this role as a fiduciary role, that is, you hold the data in trust. In terms of leading a privacy practice, I think clarity is something that is very essential, and that is what will actually get you there in terms of compliance.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Data Security Council of India's Security Chips podcast. This episode is a privacy special. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act, DPDPA, is now the talk of the town. And our today's guest is a lady who has been leading these conversations in this fraternity and implementing privacy for a large conglomerate. I'm glad to introduce Priyanka Sharma, Head of Technology Laws and Group DPO at Aditya Birla Group. Prior to this, she served as the Global Privacy Officer at CRISIL Limited. Priyanka also specializes in IT contract negotiations and GDPR compliance, holding over a decade of experience. She is a featured leader in DSCI's Privacy Leadership Forum as well. Priyanka, welcome to our DSCI podcast. So first thing first, what's your take on India's Data Protection Act? What do you think, how has the law shaped up? And what's your take on privacy implementation?
So firstly, thank you, Amit, for having me here. So if you look at the way the DPDP Act has shaped up, initially we started with a judgment that made privacy a fundamental right. After that, the journey for drafting the bill itself was a very arduous journey for the industry, for the people who were involved in drafting the bill. Post that, we saw a lot of back and forth that happened. But I think the way it has shaped today, after a lot of industry consultations that were done, I think even though a lot of people say that we need more prescriptive law, something that, actually prescribes what are the security controls we need to put in place, what are the privacy measures that we need to undertake in our organizations. I think I quite like the way the law has been drafted today because it is apt for the place where we are in the global ecosystem today, where India places itself. We want to be seen as a innovator, and a principle-based law is something that will give us some freedom within the framework, so to say, to explore and innovate better, having ethical and compliance related guardrails in place. Instead of becoming very prescriptive, which would have, in a way, stifled innovation, I think we are going the right way right now with the new DPDP law.
Correct. And what's your take on the implementation journey? Do you think the May 2027 deadline would suffice?
So I think everybody will agree that any timeline you give is not going to be enough. You look at the GDPR also, they gave 2 years for implementation, but even today the jurisprudence is evolving. Even today the companies are actually understanding how to implement some aspects of it. So it's a long journey for us. But I think at least the low-hanging fruits, the must-haves must be put in place by the time the deadline is actually triggered.
Rightly said. I think it's a good start. So Priyanka, let's talk a little bit about your journey. You have had a very fascinating career journey, right from, drafting IT contracts and working on legal policies to today becoming a global data privacy officer as well as handling technology laws. So how have you fared in this journey, and what do you see your shift in your career?
So I started out as an IT lawyer, working in-house in different organizations. So the big shift that I see is if you look at IT contracts, these are the ones that will primarily help you to mitigate your risks if an event happens. So it is something that will protect you when something goes wrong. What about preventing something from going wrong? So those are the things that we need to take care of from a privacy perspective. I think it is more about resilience that also needs to be part of your contracts, but that thought process has to develop as a privacy leader and not as a contract attorney may not be able to tell you that. So it is mainly like, if you are flying a plane, we want to keep flying the plane and we don't want to actually argue about who will pay for the costs of a crash. So that is what is, I think, important as a privacy leader now.
I agree. It puts you at the driving seat of first, working at the space where the policies are drafted and then how the contracts and rules will be implemented. So you have been working on privacy right from the GDPR days, and now India has a Data Protection Act of itself. So how do you think your experience and what kind of similarities or inferences can you draw between both the regulations and your overall understanding between them?
So I think when GDPR was notified, that was the talk of the town at that time, especially in companies that had a footprint in the EU. So that was, peak of boardroom conversations on how we are going to implement GDPR. But what we realized is if you take a principle-based approach, you will be there in terms of compliance. Maybe there are some details that will be carved out over the years, as jurisprudence improves, as there are more enforcement actions that are taken. But we can't wait for clarity forever. So I think that is one big learning that people who are implementing the DPDP Act also need to have in mind, that you cannot forever wait for clarity. There is a date that has been given. We have to comply with that date. It may go forward or, pushed back a little bit, maybe another few months. But at the end of the day, you have to be compliant without further clarity. So take a principle-based approach. I think that is the biggest learning that I got from the GDPR. Your decisions have to be explainable ethically, not just today, but maybe 2 years from now, when the law has actually evolved. So it has to be something that you will be able to explain even after 2 years, 3 years. So that is the reason why I would suggest a principle-based approach.
India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act is now a law, and organizations are grappling with implementation. From your vantage point, where do you see the biggest challenge lies in operationalizing DPDP, especially between the letter of the law and business reality? So what do you think? What's your take on this?
So I think a lot of businesses in the industry generally, the biggest challenge that I see companies facing is that most of them don't have an inventory in place. They don't know what data, which team is collecting, how are they passing on to their vendors, which are the vendors in the ecosystem that are actually handling personal data, or if there are any other internal teams that you pass on data to. So for example, a simple HR flow, if you take, your onboarding team is different, your talent acquisition is different, then it goes to onboarding, then it goes to, operations. So all of these data flows have to be mapped for internal functions as well as for external parties that you hand over data to. That is the key that I think we have been trying to drive for all the companies in the group as well. But having said that, I think one big challenge of working in a conglomerate versus, from a more structured company that I came from, I always thought that, privacy could be one strategy that would, we will just roll out one program, we'll roll out for everybody. But I think when I joined a conglomerate, that illusion broke very soon. In a conglomerate, I think there are advantages to having a federated structure as well, because each company understands the requirements of their business better. Each company understands their regulators better. You cannot have one centralized approach for all the group companies in that sense. So what we try to do is sort of have a central spine, which is our, framework, which is at a central level, with each company having the ability to move the way they want, so that they can cater to their specific issues in the manner that they want to do. So
I think privacy implementation for a retail company versus in the manufacturing domain to financial services varies quite a lot. And
right.
Primarily, I think what you mean to say is also that it is obviously it is the various functions that has to come together. Those processes has to be in place. And do you see that while we all keep saying that privacy is everyone's responsibility, it's a team that has to come together, not just the legal policy or the privacy team. But do you have any messages for, let's say, some specific, we can say some specific functions which would primarily be more important, or they should have more prudence towards handling data? How do you see organization navigate that kind of a challenge?
So I think even within a single company, within a single centralized framework, every function operates differently. So what is important for a marketing team, the kind of data that is important for them is very different from what is important for, say, an HR team or an admin team. One big thing that we have seen is some of these processing activities go quite unnoticed. You would immediately, target a marketing team saying you are, looking at customers, you are contacting them, so you have to be under a certain policy. But there are very different functions that may still be processing a huge load of personal data, but may actually be, not so visible to you. For example, you look at a channel-based business. Even if it is a B2B business, people say B2B versus B2C. B2C has more, personal data. But even if you look at a B2B business, if you have a channel-based business, if you have, something like that, they will have a lot of data. So likely if SDFs are not categorized by industry and only by the volume of the data, then I think even B2B businesses can fall under that category. So those are some of the areas where, you need specific targeted approach. Your standard privacy policy may not work because your standard privacy policies mostly target your employees, candidates, and your marketing efforts or sales efforts that you do, your customers in that sense.
Correct. Today, businesses are interoperable. They work in various sectors. So how do you think that an approach like consent management or upholding data principal rights, when customer journeys and data flows are fundamentally different across in different business sectors? So what's your take on this? How do you think it can be efficiently managed without compromising on privacy compliances?
So I think most of the businesses today cannot be very linear. So businesses will always share data amongst each other. That is how business development essentially happens, across, if you look at financial services, you look at any other, platform as well. What is important is while doing that, you have kept in mind the rights of the individuals whose data is being shared. That's the reason why the law calls this role as a fiduciary role. That is, you hold the data in trust. So for that, you have to ensure that your consent framework is interoperable. So that even if there is, if it is within the same organization, you have centralized consent framework at least, so that the sharing of data becomes easier, withdrawal of consents becomes easier, enforcing, exercising of data principal rights becomes easier. Because if you have different, platforms, different processes in place, it becomes more complex. So I think a centralized approach for certain cases becomes very, important. At the same time, I think from a legal perspective also, you need to have appropriate agreements in place, even whether it is internally between businesses, internally between different entities of the same business. You need to have proper agreements which identify what is it that this data can be used for. It has to be tied to your consent. If you have taken consent for 1, 2, 3 purposes, it has to be tied to that. If there is some fourth purpose, then this entity will have to take their own consent or find their own lawful grounds to process the data. So all of these things have to be put in place. Also, roles of each of the party needs to be identified, because, as much as you put the best security measures in place, we all know that threat actors are, 2 steps ahead of the industry. So if there is an incident where there is a data breach or something like that, who is going to be responsible for notifying regulators? Who is going to be, responsible for talking to the individuals? When it comes to data principal rights, who is the one who will liaise with the data principal? So all of these things, I think, need to be identified and chalked out very clearly in your contracts also. So, in terms of leading a privacy practice, I think clarity is something that is very essential, and that is what will actually get you there in terms of compliance.
I think clarity and ethics are the most important part. That being said, you have been also handling privacy for various jurisdictions, GDPR, state privacy laws, the emerging regulations in Asia, as well as what is now we have in India. How do we create coherent policies if one has to look at various jurisdictions?
I think, again, coming back to my original point on a principle based approach. So, if you want to do one harmonized privacy policy that fits all, that is not possible. So, what you can do is have a policy that is based on principles, and then look at the delta that you want to cover for specific sectoral laws, for example, or you have some requirements that RBI has, localization requirements and all of that. So you need to understand what is the thought process behind those requirements and what it actually applies to. So it may not apply to all the data. It may apply to some types of data. The reason why this has been put in place. Then you will understand how you can actually have a framework for your entire organization. But I think one basic, skeleton framework is something that can be achieved through a principle-based approach across all jurisdictions, across different sectoral laws as well. If you look at GDPR and the other US laws as well, all of them are based on the same principles of transparency and things like that. So
privacy, correct. So I think while talking about privacy, it also reminds me that you are one of those few women leaders in the segment of privacy. So we wanted to know, how has the journey been for you? How does this works out in predominantly in a male world? So what's your take on it, and how do you see how has been your journey, as well as what is your message for women out there who are trying to be privacy leaders for tomorrow?
I think privacy itself is a great field to be in today. We are just getting started out in India on implementing privacy laws. From here on, there is a lot more to be done. Especially if I talk about women being in this domain, I think I would rather put it this way that, it's not about charisma, but it's about clarity. You need to know what you're doing. You don't have to ask for a seat at the table. You just bring the agenda, and I think the table will rearrange itself for you. So, yeah. So I think you need to know what you're doing. You need to bring in value for your business. While the law, is based on ethics, you also need to understand how to translate that concept to the boardroom, where, which essentially revolves around revenue and, bottom line numbers. So you need to be able to translate this to your board in terms of what is the impact this can have, what is the risk. Talk the language of the people who are running the business, and they will understand. So it is a long journey. Of course, privacy is not something that you can implement and it's a quick fix. But I think the way security has evolved over the last, 5 years or so,
7 years, yeah.
I see privacy evolving the same way, be it for women or men. I think as long as you bring value to the table, the sky is the limit.
Right. You are also a leader in our DSCI's Privacy Leadership Forum. So we created this forum to have more dialogues around privacy and scape out what organizations should do, what should be the future of privacy look like, and also come up with various knowledge pieces so that we can overall work towards a better privacy posture for the country. So how do you define your role in that forum, and do you think this association has helped you in your overall journey? What would you like to share with the audience about the DSCI Privacy Leadership Forum?
I think this is a great forum, especially for people in privacy, because privacy wins are very invisible wins. Like that breach that didn't happen, or, that regulator that didn't knock on your door. Those are our wins. So for us to come together in a forum where, privacy is the main topic of discussion, You learn so much from your peers. You learn from their experiences. I think the leadership forum that DSCI has also allowed me a lot of exposure into what other organizations are doing. So it is a good place for us to find out about best practices in the industries. Discuss problems that may appear to be, related to one industry, but, something similar maybe other companies in other industries have also faced in the past. So this has been a great learning experience with my peers in the DSCI Privacy Leadership Forum. Also, I think I generally being a part of the DSCI events, forums, has been an enriching experience for me. Even with the kind of thought papers that DSCI comes up with. A lot of industry specific issues are also addressed in them. I think this is very important for privacy in India because it is still an evolving field with the laws being at a very high level. We need more, concentrated guidance on certain industries, how it is to be implemented. I think that guidance comes from these, forums like DSCI.
So I think, because privacy is a continuous journey, and I think it makes sense when everyone comes together and, it's a joint effort where we can bring out the best practices. We can also carve out the roadmaps and how privacy can be in general uplifted throughout the entire in a horizontal way. You are someone who is based out of Mumbai, the India's financial capital. So how do you overall define the privacy community in the financial capital of the country?
So I think everybody knows Mumbai is all about speed. So it is, even the privacy culture here is like a local train, you can't stop the city, but you have to reach safely and reach fast. So that is something that I think epitomizes the privacy culture in Mumbai as well. People don't want to know theory. They want to know actionable insights. What is it that is required? What are the timelines in which we are going to do it? And what is the impact on business? So in that sense, I think the privacy culture in Mumbai is quite dynamic and quite fast-paced.
Right. I think you have the comparison, the analogy between the train and privacy compliance now makes sense as we are all rushing towards a deadline. But I think, yes, while in this process, I think we all need to ensure that it is done rightly and not just done for the sake of compliance. And also as compliance, every organization has to win every time. You default once and that's where a regulator will knock your door. So I think the entire idea of implementation is to do it at a pace where it is implemented throughout your organization and done in a way that the policies and the principles are a privacy first approach. So one of my last questions. So Priyanka, once we see DPDP Act being implemented across the country and when one's organization are more mature in their privacy journey, what do you think would be one of the biggest opportunities for the companies serving not just India but the globe as well?
So I think this was one of the impediments that we had, that we did not have a law that would protect personal data as such. While we did have a lot of sectoral laws and maybe, certain elements of this were captured in the IT Act as well, but we didn't have a dedicated law that, governed the protection of personal data. So that was one of the impediments with respect to the data being transferred from international jurisdictions to India. And with the government's Viksit Bharat agenda that is being rolled out now, I think we are looking at more innovation happening in India. It's needless to say that with the innovation, we will need laws that will protect the people and the use of their data. So this is innovation, which is ethical innovation, and I think that is going to put us in the world map in terms of at least the kind of innovative practices that we are bringing to the world forum.
Better business practices. So I think while a lot has been talked about what organizations are doing or they should do, I think one important aspect is also what citizens should be aware of, what citizens should care for their privacy? Because we often see that a lot of the times it's the end users who are themselves not very cautious about their privacy. It is their data. Probably they are not aware of the ramifications. So what's your message to citizens or a end user who is interacting or who is submitting his data, his or her data to an entity? What do you think a message you'd like to give our audience as a end user? Because even as an organization, even as we are still using services from other companies, other organizations. So what do you think overall citizens or consumers at large should be more mindful about?
I think one thing I would urge everybody to do is ask why. Why do you want my data? We keep giving data to anybody who asks us. At the restaurant, we give our phone number to them. When we are right there standing there, I don't know why we have to give phone numbers to restaurants. Anybody, you fill up forms for contests and for all of those things. This is where you need to ask, why do you need so much information from me? Is it essential for the service that I'm taking from you? I think that is the most important thing that we need to do. We need to start asking why. As a culture in India, we are not very privacy centric, coming from a community based culture. Everybody knows everybody's business basically. But when that data is harnessed, today we have a lot of technology, high-end technology available. The way technology is evolving also, this data can be used in many ways now. Just telling somebody your information is very different from your information being used to profile you, to target you for scams, for, frauds. We have a lot of deep fake happening, those kind of issues that are
generated content.
Yes, those kind of issues are evolving. Even today, if you look at somebody's social media profile, you will know everything about them. Where do they live? What restaurant they like to eat at? What is their pet's name? Their child's school? So we should actually pause for a while and think about how this data can be used against us. It is not just for financial harm. It could be physical harm. It could be anything for that matter. So we have to be more conscious and we have to know our rights. We need to know that we have the right to say, no, I don't want to give you this data. I think
that's what is the need of the hour, because I think we are mostly consent is free here. So what do you think, awareness itself will be enough, or there is other aspects that even organizations can do a role to educate their end users more?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are doing that as we speak to educate the end users. And this is something that the industry can drive as well, along with what the government is doing in terms of awareness, spreading awareness. But first, I think we need to focus on, how we are educating our people to handle the data. Because with all the policies and procedures in place, it does not make sense if your end, the last mile does not know how they have to respond to individuals saying, no, I don't want to give the data. We see a lot of, I went to a store recently and I said, I don't want to give my number.
A lot of pushback from
they
the
say
other
then you
side
can't.
well.
So I was asking them, can I not buy this if I don't give my number? So that is the kind of education that needs to go to the last mile, I think. And of course, in the general public also, but that will evolve because with the rising scams and everything, how everybody now knows that even, older senior citizens and all, they know that you don't give your OTP to anybody. How that was, spread like that, I think this will also spread.
Privacy needs to reach a level where, you understand ATM pin is not to be shared.
Yes.
So I think we had a good conversation. I think my last question would be, how do you juggle your professional life, personal life, and overall at a leadership role? It is quite demanding. My question is not just directed at you. This is for the budding privacy professionals tomorrow, all those who wants to be leader tomorrow. So it's about what message do you have for them as well as how you have navigated your journey.
So for everybody who talks about work-life balance, there is no such thing as a balance. It is a daily give and take. So one, if you are attending your child's PTM meeting, you will not be in office. If you have an important meeting, maybe you will miss some game or event that your child is at. So it is always a give and take. It has to be, decided on a daily basis. It's a decision you make every day. It is not a one time decision that you take that I will do only this much over here and only that much over there. So that is,
So it's a sum total.
It's a sum total, that your balance is a sum total of the decisions you make over a period of time. So I think that is very important to also find time for yourself in all of the chaos of privacy being the big thing today and your personal life. You need to find
to have
time.
some private time for yourself
Yes,
as well.
some private
and
time
to
for
rejuvenate and get back to work. So Priyanka, before we finish the podcast, we just have a quick fireside round. I will just ask few questions. The answers has to be one-liners. So first one, biggest privacy myth. What do you think business leaders get wrong most of the times?
I think most business leaders think that it is very cost intensive. Privacy can be, suited to your budgets as well. There are a lot of low hanging fruits that you can actually pick.
Okay. Most underrated privacy issue, something which is not getting enough attention.
I think grievance redressal is something that is not getting enough attention. How that can be used to prevent, some complaints to the board.
Crystal ball, 5 years from now, where do you think privacy will be in 2030?
I think the way security has evolved over the past 5 years, privacy will now evolve the same way. It will be more mature and will get a seat at the board and more buy-in from the stakeholders.
Okay. Which sector do you think needs most attention at this hour for privacy implementation?
So some of the sectors are already regulated. I think some other sectors which are not directly regulated by other regulators but handle a lot of sensitive data, a lot of large volumes of data is social media and e-commerce. I think those need to be focused on.
Okay. And the last one. Do you think will AI replace a privacy officer?
I think AI itself has ethical issues today. So privacy being a law based on ethics, I don't think anytime soon.
We hope so. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. This was Priyanka Sharma joining us for today's episode. We had a great time. Thank you, Priyanka, for joining us today.
Thank you, Amit.